UFC 314 takes place this weekend, and in this video, I'm going to be giving you my exact predictions for how I think every fight on the card is going to play out. So without further ado, let's get into the picks. As always, I like to look at my past week's performance to see, what we can improve upon. And honestly, last week wasn't the worst, wasn't the best. We got 4 exact predictions, so that's kind of cool. Let's just go over the wrong picks, shall we? We got Joe Anderson Brito in the co-main event. Pat Sabatini went out there and I guess proved that Joe Anderson Brito has low fight IQ. He just, every which moment, Brito allowed Sabatini to grab him, and that was the end of that. I wasn't willing to trust Sabatini, with his one-trick pony style of fighting, but it seemingly worked against Brito in the small apex cage. Should have figured that. Cortavius Romeus, I was pretty confident in this guy. He goes out there and just basically gets smoked at every path by Chang Ho Lee. Every single dimension of MMA, he was getting smoked. So I thought Romeus would have, more of a fire under his belly because, he lost his first UFC fight. Now they're kind of giving him an easier matchup. Turns out, no. Luis Gurul as a favorite. I had him to beat Ode Osborne. He did go out there and win the first round, but I didn't pick Ode because of the low IQ, but then it turns out that maybe he kind of fixed that because he's been training with Aljo and stuff like that. He goes out there and gets the KO against Gurul, so good for you. Daniel Frunza, Rhys McKee, a lot of people were picking him as an underdog against Frunza. Rhys McKee was 0-4 in the UFC. I looked at Frunza's tape. It looked like he might have some dog in him. Even if he were to get knocked down early, which is what I kind of thought would happen, I thought Frunza would still be able to come back. Turns out the doctor stopped it. So if round 2 started, I have a feeling Frunza would have come back. Maybe that's just cope. But if you rewatch that, Frunza did win the latter half of the first round after getting knocked down 4 times, mind you. But yeah, then we got Pedro Falcao. He was the Finn's hammer lock. I thought he would go out there, win a decision, maybe even submit Victor Henry. He executed the game plan I thought he would in round 2, but he spent 5+ minutes just sitting on his back, letting Victor Henry leg kick him. So not sure why he did that. It's not like it was a cardio issue. He would just sit there and get leg kicked until he decided to stand up. So you're not going to win a fight like that, Pedro Falcao. So those are my wrong picks. Give me some credit. Murphy, Tavares, Finney, Barbosa, round 1 sub. That was the freest pick of the entire night, maybe of the entire year. Barbosa submission. And then Budai, Alan Carr I also predicted as well. So, not the worst slate of picks, not the best slate of picks, but I went deep into the lab for UFC Miami, so let's get into these picks. First fight on the card, we have Nora Cornolle taking on Hailey Cowan. Not sure why this matchup is a thing. I think Nora Cornolle will win this pretty definitively. If you look over her UFC run, she's only matched up against real fighters of the division. Jacqueline Cavalcanti, she nearly won by mixing in takedowns, which we thought Cornolle was mainly a striker, and she mixed in takedowns against Cavalcanti and did pretty well. Even though she lost, you could have made the argument she beat her, and Cavalcanti is ranked in the division, is pretty good. Melissa Mullins. Melissa Mullins, after this fight, she went out there and destroyed her next opponent, Segura. So this win is aging like a fine wine as well. And then Jocelyn Edwards, she defeated without even shooting takedowns. To beat Jocelyn Edwards, usually you got to take her down, but Nora Cornolle kept it standing for 15 minutes and won a clean decision against her. So all facets of MMA kind of lean in Nora Cornolle's favor in this matchup. Hailey Cowan, she hasn't fought, I think, 2 years. Yeah, 1 year and 11 months. She's had 3 scheduled fights since then. Almost all of them have been canceled due to Hailey Cowan injury. Now she's coming back. She has, does she even have a win in the UFC? No, she has a split win on the Contender Series. And that win from 3 years ago is somehow pushing her towards a spot on a UFC Miami card. I think this is a giant setup for Nora Cornolle to go out there and maybe even potentially find a finish. I'm not going to go that risky and pick Nora Cornolle to win by finish. I think she will win a resounding decision. Hailey Cowan, the only thing she has to offer in this matchup is potentially takedowns, potentially controlling Nora Cornolle. But, 2 years out of the octagon against someone whose trajectory is pointing upwards in the UFC, I don't think it's going to cut it. Minus 180 price tag on Nora Cornolle as we speak. I think that's pretty good odds. So Nora Cornolle by decision. Next fight on the card, we have Tresean Gore taking on Marco Tulio. And I've been looking for a spot to fade Marco Tulio because if you look at his fights that he's had, right? The Contender Series fight where he got the KO, the first round was kind of even on the feet. Marco Tulio is not out here throwing with reckless abandon. He's timing his strikes. He's not a big volume guy, which can get him in trouble if he's fighting someone who is a volume guy. It could also get him in trouble in a fight where he can't find a finish Because if he can't find a finish, then, you know, his volume is not going to win him the decision, is basically what I'm trying to say. So against a guy like Tresean Gore, I understand Tapology has 88% in Tulio's favor to find this knockout. I do understand that Tresean Gore did get knocked out by Cody Brundage with an overhand right. You know, the chin might be in question. But if we're going to take all things into consideration, Tresean Gore has the jiu-jitsu advantage in this matchup, back-to-back wins by guillotine. So if Marco Tulio decides that the striking isn't really working out in his favor and he shoots for a takedown, that's going to help out Tresean Gore. Another thing is I think Tresean Gore's power can be equal to Marco Tulio. Tresean Gore might not have a resounding KO win on his record, but if you watch back the fights, he is rocking some of his opponents, okay? Against Bryan Battle, he was throwing with reckless abandon nearly every strike, and Bryan Battle had to make it a clinch fest to win that fight. And then against, let's see, who else here? Not Antonio Trocoli, but against Cody Brundage, he was having some success on the feet as well. And I'm forgetting, but there's another fight where he had, again, on the Ultimate Fighter, when he fought Gilbert Urbina, he just slept that man with one punch. So Tresean Gore has knockout power. Tresean Gore has submission ability. And they're basically the same size, 6 foot and 75-inch reach for both of them. I'm not sure why Tulio is a minus 350 favorite. If Tulio, there's a very good chance that Tulio goes out there and makes us a staring contest for 3 rounds, in which case Tresean Gore should be closer to like a plus 150. So Tresean Gore can win this by outvoluming Tulio, which is a potential. He can win this by submission, which if Tulio decides to shoot a dusty takedown, that's possible. And I think he can even win this by KO. Tulio is very reckless on the feet sometimes and is there to get hit. So for all those reasons, I think there's enough there to take the underdog in this matchup. I'm going with Tresean Gore by round 2 submission. Next fight on the card, we have Sumudaerji taking on Mitch Raposo, and I'm not really sure why the odds are the way they are. Mitch Raposo is nearly a plus 200 underdog. This is another fight where I'm taking the underdog back-to-back fights. Sumudaerji, string of red L's, 3-fight losing streak in the UFC. And if you examine those losses closely, okay, he does have striking success, but if we're being real, he wasn't able to knock out Matt Schnell, all right? This is a striker. This is what he's known for, and he was not able to knock out Matt Schnell at the flyweight level. Everyone is knocking out Matt Schnell nowadays, so I'm not putting a lot of stock in Sumudaerji's KO ability at the UFC level. So there's that. Also, you look back at all of these 3 losses, all these 3 red L's, Sumudaerji was getting taken down at will, basically. Whenever the other fighter decided to go for a takedown, the takedown occurred. Even Charles Johnson landed a couple takedowns, and Charles Johnson's not really a takedown guy. He's more of a striker. Granted, you could say Sumudaerji turned Charles Johnson into a wrestler, but the fact that he was able to even land the takedowns on Sumudaerji just tells me all I need to know. Mitch Raposo is an All-American D1 wrestler, all right? He's coming off a loss to Andre Lima, which he took on short notice, but if you look back, that fight was very close. You know, you could have scored it for Mitch Raposo if you were lacking maybe some brain cells. But Mitch Raposo put up a good fight against Andre Lima. Didn't really shoot for takedowns. That was the problem. He kept it standing for all 3 rounds. I think in this one, Mitch knows the game plan. It's very simple. Take down Sumudaerji and just lay in half guard, rain down some ground and pound, maybe find a submission. And I think, he does have an 8-inch reach disadvantage, which is huge. He is going to be the way smaller fighter in the cage, but if Sumudaerji throws recklessly with reckless abandon like he usually does, I think Mitch Raposo has a giant chance to time his takedowns and just win minutes on the ground. So for those reasons, at plus 200, I'm liking this dog too. Give me Mitch Raposo by decision. Next fight on the card, we have Sedriques Dumas taking on Michał Oleksiejczuk, and I think this is a 3rd straight fight where I'm taking the underdog, and honestly, all 3 fights where I'm taking the dog, it feels good. All right, in this one, Sedriques Dumas 10-2, with his losses being to Nursultan Ruzaboyev, which was a fluke because Ruzaboyev eye poked him, and now it counts as an uppercut and ground punches. That's not real. That didn't really happen. He didn't get knocked out by Ruzaboyev. He got eye poked, and that was the end of the fight. And they calling it a KO. The other one was a guillotine choke loss to Josh Fremd because he was shooting a dusty takedown on Josh Fremd. So Michał Oleksiejczuk doesn't really have submissions in his arsenal, so I'm not really concerned about Dumas getting guillotined by Oleksiejczuk. And Oleksiejczuk, at the UFC level, yeah, maybe he has a couple KOs, but he did KO Chidi Njokuani by outlasting him. That was pretty impressive, but the game plan's out there on how to beat this guy. You got to take him down or clinch him against the cage, all right? And Dumas recently has shown that he's going to go out there and take you down and make this a 15-minute slogfest. Dumas has no problem making this fight boring, and I think that's exactly what's going to happen here. I think on the feet, Dumas has a 5-inch reach advantage, so it's going to be hard for Oleksiejczuk to get in on the punches. And I think that's going to cause Oleksiejczuk to, be a little reckless on the feet. And then as soon as he starts being reckless, I think Dumas is going to time some takedowns. And Oleksiejczuk's get-up game is pretty not good. I know he has been training with the Fighting Nerds. That is a recent thing that Oleksiejczuk is doing. But I think that the line is like this because he made it a close fight with Shara Bullet. And Shara Bullet is not one to try to take you down. So the fact that he went to a close decision loss with Shara Bullet, I think that's why he's minus 200 against Dumas. I think Dumas has all paths to victory. I think he can potentially find a KO punch on the feet against Oleksiejczuk. We've seen him crumble to less. I think he can get takedowns and win a decision that way. And I think Dumas can win by submission if the fight is on the ground for a prolonged period of time. Not that Dumas is some kind of submission expert, but he is a big wrestling guy, so if Oleksiejczuk starts acting desperate on the ground, I can see Dumas sneaking in a sub. So all 3 paths to victory are there for Dumas. Oleksiejczuk, I think he just needs to knock out Dumas to win. I don't think he can really win a decision. So more paths to victory, more durable in my opinion. He's only 10-2 compared to 19-9. I think Dumas wins this by decision. Prepare for 2 of the quickest breakdowns of your life, considering the next 2 fights are heavy, heavy favorites, and I simply don't see how the underdog can win either of them. So we got Julian Erosa taking on Darren Elkins. Darren Elkins wears damage, that's his thing. He's good at outlasting people, that's his thing. But the thing is, Julian Erosa, I just think he's going to submit him. Darren Elkins is going to shoot for a lot of takedowns. Julian Erosa is a wizard on the ground. That's basically the whole breakdown. I have no interest in betting this fight. I'm just simply picking Erosa because the path is very simple. Elkins takedown, Erosa's submission. And I think that will occur in round 2. So Julian Erosa by round 2 sub. Next fight on the card, just like I said, prepare for the 2 quickest breakdowns of your life. Chase Hooper taking on Jim Miller. Jim Miller is about to turn 42 years old. He is coming off a guillotine win against Damon Jackson, so that's very interesting. But Chase Hooper, in his last fight against Clay Guida, he showed that he elevated his submission game, and against Vyacheslav Borshev, he showed that he elevated his striking game. This guy's very well-rounded at this point. Jim Miller can land a bomb, similar to how Steve Garcia did, but I'm not confident enough to pick Jim Miller, nor am I confident enough to bet Jim Miller. I don't really want to bet this fight at all, so on Saturday, there's going to probably be like a half-hour window where I'm just sitting back doing nothing, and it's going to probably be between this fight and the last one. So I think Chase Hooper just can beat him in every facet of MMA, and I'm relying on Jim Miller to, be durable enough to last a decision. So Chase Hooper by decision. Next fight on the card, we have Virna Jandiroba taking on Xiaonan Yan Xiaonan. I'm pretty sure it's Yan Xiaonan, but, tabology is getting me confused. But Virna Jandiroba, she showed in her past fights that she has a game plan, and she's able to execute it. She just needs to get the fight to the ground. She might not submit you on the ground, but she will keep you there. That's basically Virna Jandiroba's whole game. There are certain fights where she does entertain the striking, like against, Lupi Godinez, she entertained the striking a little bit. Against Angela Hill, she entertained the striking a little bit. The problem against Amanda Ribas was she entertained the striking too much, and Ribas was able to win a decision against her. Since then, it seems like she's evolved her game a little bit. She knows when to shoot for takedowns. She knows when to keep it striking. Yan Xiaonan is one of the few strawweight women that has KO power. So I think Virna Jandiroba, the game plan is simple. Take down Yan Xiaonan, just like Hailey did multiple times. Hailey controlled Yan Xiaonan for a majority of their 5-round fight. Tabitha Ricci was not able to succeed with that, but Virna Jandiroba is probably 10 levels ahead of Tabitha Ricci in the takedown department. So for all those reasons, Yan Xiaonan has shown a history of being controlled and taken down on the ground against high-level wrestlers. That's exactly what Virna Jandiroba is, and I think Virna Jandiroba will go ahead and do just that. So I think Xiaonan will survive the submission threat, but I don't think she'll survive being controlled on the ground. So Virna Jandiroba by decision. Next fight on the card, we have Dan Ige taking on Sean Woodson, and I really, I'm starting to at first I disliked Sean Woodson, then I liked him, and now I kind of dislike him again. Sean Woodson is the Skeletor of the featherweight division. He's going to have a 7-inch reach advantage in this fight. It's going to look funny when they're actually in the cage together because of just how different in size they are. Dan Ige is more of a KO guy. That's like his main path to victory. Sean Woodson did nearly get chinned by Luis Saldana. So we got to keep that in mind. Saldana, if he didn't throw a random knee on the ground to cost himself a point, Saldana was going to win that fight by round 1 KO. But since then, Woodson has shaped up his game a little bit. You know, Dennis Bezuchka stood no chance because the reach advantage was just too much. Charles Jourdain, this should not have been a split. He very clearly beat Charles Jourdain. Alex Caceres, I think Alex Caceres actually could have won that fight. But then again, that was like Skeletor versus Skeletor. So yeah. And then Fernando Padilla, Skeletor versus Skeletor yet again. This time, the real Skeletor, Sean Woodson, wins by KO. So in this one, I think it's going to go pretty similarly to that. You know, whenever Sean Woodson has this much of a reach advantage, it's basically Sean Woodson versus himself. Can Sean Woodson keep the fight at range for 15 minutes against Dan Ige? I think that is a huge possibility. If he's not able to, Ige can land a big shot, win by KO, of course, but the odds, and I'm just not taking a chance on that. Woodson has fought a similar foe to Ige before and was able to just outclass him on the feet. So this is the biggest jump up for Woodson to date, and this is a pretty big jump down for Dan Ige, considering he's fought Diego Lopez and Lerone Murphy in back-to-back fights. But I think it's like the perfect fight to get Sean Woodson into the division. You know, just win a clean decision. That's basically what it is. And I think he'll have the ability to do that. Dan Ige doesn't really have takedowns to resort to. This is going to be standing for the most part. I would really pick Woodson. I would pick against Woodson if he was going up against like a wrestler or a grappler type. But that's not what Dan Ige is. Dan Ige is going to keep this standing. So that plays right into Woodson's card. So Sean Woodson by decision. Next fight on the card, we have Nikita Krylov taking on Dominick Reyes. And I'm taking Dominick Reyes, all right? Ever since that win against Dustin Jacoby, I'm all in taking Dominick Reyes. Surviving Jacoby, not getting knocked out by Jacoby, and delivering a knockout of his own against Jacoby was enough for me to think that Dominick Reyes is back. He's taking his career seriously again. I know he's 35. He is aging. But I think he's due for a career renaissance. I think it's the perfect opponent for him to do so. Nikita Krylov has not fought in 2 years. All right. And if you look back at his fight history, he only has, I think, 4 KOs at the UFC level. And they span over the course of like 15 years because there was a gap where Krylov was cut from the UFC. And then he came back after a few years. So Nikita Krylov is mainly a wrestler-grappler. He does have hands. He does have power in his hands. The way that Dominick Reyes loses is going against someone that's going to knock him out. Do I think Nikita Krylov has the ability to knock out Dominick Reyes? Yes, but I think it's a very small possibility. Nikita Krylov's not out there just KOing people. That's not his game. He fought Johnny Walker. It's not on this list, but he fought Johnny Walker, and he had 11 minutes of control time on Johnny Walker. He decided to become a takedown artist against Johnny Walker. It was almost like he was fearful of the striking, or the game plan was just take down Johnny Walker, either of the two. So against Dominick Reyes, the game plan must be to strike with him. And if the game plan is to strike with Dominick Reyes, I think Dominick Reyes wins that. If the game plan is to take down Dominick Reyes, we haven't really seen Reyes against a wrestler like that that's going to attempt to take him down. And I think Reyes has enough wrestling in his back pocket of his own to counteract Krylov's wrestling. So what is Krylov's path to victory? I can't put my finger on it. It's an early knockout. That's really it. Anyone who fights Dominick Reyes nowadays, that's their path, early knockout. And I don't think Nikita Krylov has that in his arsenal. I don't think he has that in his bag. I might sound like a Dominick Reyes lover. I kind of am. I'm kind of, I did pick against him. I did make Dustin Jacoby the hammerlock, and Dominick Reyes won. So I'm not always picking Dominick Reyes blindly. I just think in this matchup, he's going against someone that doesn't have the KO ability to knock him out, and is going to probably resort to wrestling. And I think Dominick Reyes can win a fight like that. So for those reasons, Dominick Reyes by decision. Next fight on the card, we have Yair Rodriguez taking on Patricio Pitbull. Yet another fight where I'm going to keep the breakdown short and simple. If you're picking Patricio Pitbull, you are most likely a Patricio Pitbull fan. If you're picking Patricio Pitbull, you most likely think that Pitbull will be able to find a submission against Yair Rodriguez. Yair is on a 2-fight losing streak and did lose by submission to Brian Ortega in his last fight. So, you might think stars are aligning. Pitbull submission because Ortega submitted him. I'm not buying it. This is Pitbull's first fight in the UFC. He's going against one of the guys that's been in the top 5 of featherweight for almost 10 years at this point. He's just always lurking in the top 5. And I'm not buying Pitbull's path to victory here. Whenever he's gone up against, a stronger, more powerful foe, he has crumbled. He has lost by knockout, a few times over the course of his Bellator career, and more in recent memory than anything. You know, he's getting chinned recently. Got chinned a year and 8 months ago. I know AJ McKee chinned him as well. It's not there, but I think Yair has the striking skill set to KO Patricio Pitbull, and I don't think Yair's grappling is that bad. Patricio Pitbull's wrestling isn't that good to get it to the ground if he wanted to, so if this is standing, Yair has a 6-inch reach advantage and a 5-inch height advantage. I think Yair just schools him on the feet, and if this were to get to the ground, you know, Pitbull has a chance to submit him, of course, but this is a 3-rounder, keep that in mind. I think that also helps Yair's chances of winning. Because, you know, if it was elongated, potentially Pitbull with his championship round experience could use his cardio. But it's not. It's only 3 rounds. So Yair just needs to win 2 of them by outstriking him, and I think he would most definitely do that. I think this is more of a marketing ploy by the UFC. You know, they're putting Pitbull on the main card of UFC Miami. It's like, you got to tune in to watch Pitbull's rookie performance. I don't think it's going to work out this time. So yeah, Yair Rodriguez to win by decision. Next fight on that card, we have good versus evil. We have Bryce Mitchell taking on Gene Silva. And in this one, you know, Gene Silva has showed in his fights that there is potential to lose. You know, he's not a big minute winner. He's a big powerful striker, but he's not throwing with a lot of volume. Against Bryce Mitchell, that could spell disaster. You know, the more that Gene Silva waits to throw, that leaves more entry for Bryce Mitchell to shoot for relentless takedowns. We have yet to see Gene Silva fight someone that's going to try to take him down relentlessly. Bryce Mitchell is the first one to do it. Bryce Mitchell also probably the best opponent Gene Silva will have faced up until this point. This is a big step down for Bryce Mitchell as he's coming off a win again. Oh, so never mind. It's not a step down from Kron Gracie. It is a step down from Josh Emmett. It's not a step down from Kron Gracie. If we're keeping this striking, Gene Silva can most definitely knock out Bryce Mitchell, which is exactly what I think will happen. If you want my honest opinion on what is going to happen, I think Bryce Mitchell wins round 1. I think Gene Silva will be a great live betting spot. I think Bryce Mitchell has the tools to win at least a round against Gene Silva. But as the fight elongates, I think Gene Silva will start letting it go a little more. And when he starts letting it go a little more, I think he's going to find the chin of Bryce Mitchell. He's found the chin of nearly every UFC opponent he's fought thus far. Melsick, Drew Dober, Weston Wilson. I think Bryce Mitchell gets added to the list, to be honest. So for those reasons, I think Gene Silva potentially loses round 1, but I think Gene Silva wins by round 2 KO. Next fight on that card, we have Michael Chandler taking on Paddy Pimblett. And you know, I've been going back and forth on this fight, but I think I'm on the right side. I think I'll be on the right side of history with this one. Paddy Pimblett, you know, he showed good striking in his recent fights. He's good at utilizing the leg kick to frustrate you. And sometimes when he leg kicks you, he's kind of hoping you grab it so that you take him down so the fight gets to the ground by any means necessary. So I do like that about Paddy Pimblett. He is improving his striking, but he does leave his chin out there to get hit. And as a minus 160 favorite, I simply cannot trust you if you're just leaving your chin out there to get hit. And the only basis is Scousers don't get knocked out. You know, I can't pick you on the reasoning that Scousers don't get knocked out. I just can't. And Michael Chandler has rocket ships for fists sometimes. He's going to throw everything he's got into these punches that he's throwing at Paddy Pimblett. Yes, I understand Chandler has a proclivity to get submitted. Even Dustin Poirier was able to submit him. That was 2 years ago. All right. He also fought Charles Oliveira in a 5-rounder, and 3 of those 5 rounds, Charles Oliveira was just sitting on the back of Chandler and just could not get the submission. So if Charles Oliveira over the course of 5 rounds couldn't submit Michael Chandler, and the fight took place on the ground for the most part, I don't think over the course of 5 rounds, Paddy Pimblett will be able to submit Michael Chandler. I think the MMA math will actually work out in this scenario. So if Paddy can't submit Chandler, this is also Paddy's first 5-round fight. Chandler's had multiple of them. There is a chance for gassing issues for Paddy. Not saying we've seen that, but there is a chance, considering it's his first 5-rounder. You know, Paddy might be more hesitant to throw early because he's preparing for 5 rounds. That could lead Chandler to win a couple of the earlier rounds. A lot of things can go in Chandler's favor in this matchup, in my opinion. He can win by KO if Paddy leaves his chin out there. He can win a volume battle against Paddy if Paddy decides to slow things up because he's preparing for 5 rounds. I don't think he can win by submission, but I think Chandler won't get submitted. So more paths to victory for Chandler, and I think Paddy's main path will not work out, which is submission. So for those reasons, I'm going to take Michael Chandler by round 3 KO. And that brings us to the main event of the evening, the scariest fight to break down, because it kind of just feels like we're heading towards disaster Alexander Volkanovski taking on Diego Lopez for the vacant featherweight championship. And you don't need to hear it from me. All right, it's very simple what might occur in this matchup. Diego Lopez is either going to KO Volk early. If this fight starts round 3, put all of your money on Volkanovski. That's basically the whole breakdown. All right, Diego Lopez early finish or Volkanovski wins a clean fight. There's just no in between. Diego Lopez is all in or nothing in the first couple rounds. And almost every fight that extends past round 2, you see Diego Lopez getting clipped. You see him slowing down a lot. His cardio kind of goes out the window because he puts everything he's got into those first couple rounds. So if Volk can just outlast the initial onslaught from Lopez, I think he's going to have major striking success as the fight elongates. And Lopez, yes, he's a submission specialist, and he's always fishing for subs off his back if the fight were to hit the ground. But Volk is also a BJJ guy himself, training with Craig Jones. So Lopez is either early finish or bust. I don't think Lopez has the submission to fall back on like he does against most people he fights. So it's really Lopez round 1-2 KO or Volk wins. That's how I see it. Volk is coming off back-to-back KO losses. It is a little tricky to trust a guy who's been chinned in back-to-back fights, especially at 36 years old. And also consider we've rarely seen someone regain the belt after losing it. So, man, it's really tough to call, but I think Volk can just outlast Lopez early. And that's basically it. I think Volk outlasts Lopez early, and I think he just wins by however he wants once the first 2 rounds end. So for those reasons, I'm not willing to take Lopez in a 5-round fight against one of the GOATs of the weight class of all time. It just seems like stupid. It just seems stupid. You know, I would need Lopez to be like plus 250 to consider him. Plus 125 is not going to cut it. It's just not. This is a tough one. Yeah. Volk, just don't get shinned early and don't make me look like a fool. That's basically it. Thank you, Volk. Alexander Volkanovski by decision. Thank you for getting to the end of an episode of Fins Chats. I hope you enjoyed this one. Let me know in the comments who your favorite underdog is this week. No one said it last week, so no one to shout out, really. Let me know now who your favorite dog is. And, yeah, hopefully you didn't notice that my glasses got snapped in half. You know, I had to tape them together like an utter savage. But have a great rest of your day. Leave a like, comment, subscribe. Have a great rest of your day, Sam.